You're on or on. Oh, can you hear me? I was pointing and talking. I took off the input because I had the headphones on. I had a conversation, and what was happening was like I was double hearing myself, and I was like, "This is not good." Anyway, we're big, we're bad, we're back. It's Feedback Friday. Eric, if you can turn on the normal lights, everybody can see that we have the Adams up still. So, who here is an Adams user? Can we see them now? Yeah, there they are. So, it'd be nice to talk a bit about speakers, you know. It's great that we're going to review mixers and talk about that, which is all part of it. But let's also, you know, talk about all of the other wonderful things that that we do, you know. As we always say, it is called Produce Like a Pro, so we should be talking about production as well. Hey, Ken. Hey, Tom. Hey, Jens. Hey, Anita. Hey, Chris. Hey, Chetty. Hey, Ray. Hey, Gail. Hey, Gail. Hey, Michael. Hey, Marion, Sam. Hey, Chris. Blue Wave Dave. Hey, Filippo and Nadia. Hey, Patrick Larson. Hey, Twin Spruce Studios. Karen. Karen says she wants Adams. Well, you can come over and listen to them and see what you think, seeing as you're my neighbor. Neighborito. I was not like a Family Guy, yeah? Howdy, neighborito. Anyway, Downey, hey there. Hey, Michael. I think I said hey, Blue Wave Dave, but I'll say it again if I didn't. Hey, David. Hey, Malimba Limbo. Hey, Ozzy Butler. Hey, Ed Kraus. Hey, Frank. Hey, Russell Cameron Thomas. Hey, Andrew Bolam. Hey, TSM0227. Hey, Anita. Hey, Paul. Arthur. How are you, my friend? Real Raven 2000. But anyway, so yeah, we've been busy, as you probably can tell. And we are trying to get a video out this morning, and it doesn't seem to be happening in the moment, talking about Christian's new plugin. But anyway, enough of that. Let's get stuck in. Who what do we have first? We have Juan Martin. Hey, Juan. Juan says, hi, everyone. This is my first mix for the Academy. I've chosen Hear the Wolves Cry because I loved Katie Ferrara's performance. Being a guitar player, I connected with the song too. It's such a pleasure to have the possibility to mix and produce music so well performed. I like the folk mood of the track, and my intention was to enhance it by tracking some extra organic elements. I added some rain stick, bass guitar, a couple of guitars, and an accordion. I'm not an accordion player, but some comping helped. At this stage of my understanding of my mixing, I did my best. I would love to get feedback from all of the members and, of course, from you, Warren. We all know how precious it is to get advice from the community and from experienced engineers like you. Thanks a lot in advance. Excellent one. Yeah, Katie has a wonderful voice. This one's always been an interesting challenge because, of course, it's live, acoustic, and vocal. And I think we've had some people do some production elements to it. And if you are watching and you're one of those people that's done production elements, please add them. Would love to hear it. Would love to hear it. All right. Sorry, when I say add them, please get them to Eric. Have you ever got them before?
Yeah, whenever I get stuff, I add them into the original multi-tracks of these songs. So you have the original multi-tracks, and you have a folder that has drums by blah, blah, blah.
Great. So anybody that's ever done any production stuff on this, one of the wonderful things about the community, as we always joke, or I always joke, I should say, it is produced like a pro. So if you've done any additional production on this stuff, feel free to get it over to Eric, and he will add it. Marvelous. Okay. Here's Juan Martin. Hear the Wolves Cry by Katie Ferrara. I love this song, and even though I can't actually hear what I'm playing when I pick up the guitar, because once the track's playing, I don't hear anything, I'm going to strum along.
I can hear the howl that goes through my mind, pulling me closer in the dead of night. My heart's pounding like never before. into the forest is where I belong. If I left this city line, packed my bags and drove for miles and miles, would you guide me with reflected light? How far do I run? I hear the wolves cry. 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 I look to the moon tonight, a reddish hue, illuminate the past, colored shades of blue. I dig beneath the branches and watch them unwind, memories of the child I left behind. If I left this city line through the blazing telephone wires, felt you guide me with reflected light. How far do I run? I hear the wolves cry. 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 I wanna run as fast as I can, never looking back at who I am. And I know it's just a matter of time before the sun begins to rise. If I left this all behind, headed towards your light in the velvet sky, no more painted faces, worn out places, the birds are flying high. If I left this city line through the blazing telephone wires, felt you guide me with reflected light. How far do I run? I hear the wolves cry. 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 I hear the wolves cry.
I love the additions. So, one, are these all one's additions? Is one here? Are you here? So one, I love all the additions you've done. The accordion, those extra classical guitar parts, everything is really, really superb. Really love it. I do think you need some judicious mixing here. I'm not talking about compression and EQ and all that kind of stuff. I'm talking more about muting. Actually, I am talking a little bit about EQ because, for instance, there's a really nice kind of guitar part that happens on the left-hand side. Notice how I check the cables on the left to make sure it's run the right way, and instinctively check to make sure when I say left, it really is the left. Anyway, on the left-hand side, and it would have been nicer if it was like sort of thinner. There's some kind of diddly kind of parts, but if they're really big and bold and have a lot of low mids and a lot of sparkly top end, they do tend to take up a little bit of real estate. And if they're deliberately kind of dragged across the beat, which they are, and I do love kind of a la la da 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 across it, like a la da 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 da, you know, I like that. I think it's really beautiful, but as big as they are, it can actually take us out of the zone. So it might be nice to take some of those little parts, those beautiful overdubs, and thin them out a bit, and maybe even have them move, you know, maybe have them move left to right. And then I feel like the accordion is a little pervasive. There's a couple of times where it just is in there, but I just wish it ducked a little bit. There's a few tiny rubs, and I know a couple of people, you know, there's a few, you know, rubs here and there, and people ask me what I mean by rubs. I mean, like melodically, there's a couple of times where there's like a semitone difference, and it's okay when it's subtle, but again, maybe a little bit of judicious riding, even potentially muting some stuff. the point is like all the overdubs are beautiful. They're very interesting. They make a song which is just a vocal and acoustic, very, very interesting. But see if you can get them to be a little bit more ear candy rather than all full sounding and just making it a little bit kind of, for want of a better word, a little bit cluttered. It gets a little bit cluttered when it's like that. So have some fun with it. I love the overdubs, but see if you can thin it out just a little bit, volume ride some stuff, feature some stuff, and, make it so it's a little bit more driven from the vocal and the acoustic, and then this stuff becomes more supportive and interesting. But it is wonderful. Are these all of Juan's overdubs? I wasn't reading. Thank you, Sam and Mary and Sam. Yeah, it's a really beautiful set of overdubs, and if these are all Juan's, fantastic. And one, if you're watching this, please, can you send to Eric so other people can use it? I mean, it's fantastic. This is why it's called Produce Like a Pro. We do talk about productions here. It's great to have people mixing it, but it's also great to have additional production stuff and take some of these songs to the next level. Absolutely superb. Wow, great. Thank you, Juan. Next up is Stephen Korst, who is a long time and a wonderful member of the Academy. Stephen says, hello, everyone. Here is my mix of this beautiful song, Caden Cashmere's The Sweetest Goodbye. As always, any comments or feedback are most welcome and greatly appreciated. Kind regards, Steve K. Excellent. Excited to hear.
Broken, beaten down, drowning in your tears, keeps on pouring down. The fire in your heart's burned out. Feels like nothing's left, chasing to become a warrior, being something that you're not. Forcing the thought, you have to try so hard. You have to push so far that you let yourself burn. And do you ever learn? I have to take my part when you gone and broke my heart. I promise I'll be strong. I learned nothing alone. It's the sweetest goodbye. With the fear in my mind, I can't leave you behind, but I can't seem to find my place alongside you. Let fires burn out too. You say that you're fine. It's the sweetest goodbye. You're lost in your own mind games. You feel like you will never change. Moving on is harder than it seems. So stop pretending that you're alright, that you're just fine when you don't have me to stand by. It's funny, but it's true that I'm the one that's missing you. All I did was hurt you. You made me think that I was worth you. The ones I love got hurt when I put myself first. It's the sweetest goodbye when the fear
Really nice, Stephen. Stephen always does wonderful work and has been incredibly encouraging in this community and really supports a lot of people, as many of you do. I really like it. What's interesting is I went from the headphones, which those of you know, we use the Blues. They're a little scoopy, They've got an extended low end, artificially extended, quite frankly, and a little bit of fizz on the top. They're not Beats headphones, don't get me wrong. They're not like, really ridiculously, smiley faced, but they do, they do sort of have that extended top and bottom. And obviously, if you watched, and if you haven't already, please check out the Adams video. But the Adam video, one of the things that I appreciate about these speakers, and remember, we kept this on the flat setting. We didn't get in there and change anything yet because I wanted to hear the real characteristics of the speakers. Didn't do any kind of like bottom end boost or anything like that. One of the characteristics of these is they have a not very, but definitely a pronounced mid-range. So I'm listening on my, little bit more scoopy headphones, and I'm thinking to myself, there's a lot of information going on in the mid range, like mid to high mid, sort of the 1 to 5K area, probably predominantly in the 3 to 5 area. There's a lot of that acoustic going, shing, jing, 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 and not a huge amount of sparkly sparkle, and definitely not a lot or any real low mids. Don't get me wrong, it's all sort of there, but it gets a little cluttered in that area with the instruments. So I think probably relaxing the high and low passing a little bit would help, particularly the high passing. Just relaxing it, not reducing it. Removing it, not removing it, but relaxing it. And then the other thing is like, I'm on the fence, Stephen, about the vocal because I love how like forward and edgy it is. And it's very modern with that kind of crispy crunch to it, which has got a lot to do with the fact that obviously, Caden is singing into a U47. It's going into, a BAE 1073. It's a 160 VU and 1176. Everything's kind of a little bit, I wouldn't say driven, but definitely on the edge. She's powerful, hitting the mic pretty hard, hitting the compression hard, especially 1176, which has that grit. And I think it's a little bit exaggerated for me, just a tiny bit exaggerated. I don't hate it, though. I do like it, and I appreciate how forward and present you've made the vocal. But I'm just wondering, in that sort of detail-y, kind of crunchy high mids, whether you could sort of relax everything just a tiny bit. I feel like probably what's happening, and not probably because it's happened to me all the time, is you take one thing like a vocal and you get it like super present and a little bit crunchy and wonderful sounding, and then everything starts to match. It's almost like one predominant element of your mix dictates how you do everything else, which is actually quite logical. The last thing you want to do is have a really super bright instrument and then everything else dull, because if somebody turns up the treble on their stereo system or whatever it might be, they'll rip their head off with the one instrument. So I get it. It's balanced and even, but I think if you relaxed a little bit of that crunchiness on the vocal, just a bit, and then you would probably find you could relax everything else just a little bit and open up some of the lows and low mids. Just a shade. I'm not talking about like putting it all back in. I'm just saying relaxing some of that high passing. And I think all over with a bit more emphasis maybe on automating the vocal to be up front rather than compressing it to be up front. And I'm not talking about taking off all of the compression. I'm not talking about taking off all the boost of the high mids or any crunchiness that you're adding. Just relaxing everything. Like, I think you're in the ballpark. No, I know you're in the ballpark. I know you know what you're doing. Just relax it all a little bit. And this happens to me all the time, and I'm sure it happens to many of us. You're in there, you're mixing away, and you get so focused on something, and you get it really super balanced. And then the next day, you just realize you went 5% too far. And I think that's what it is. It's like 5-10% too far. I just want a little bit more natural in it, just a tiny bit more natural. But I got to be honest, it's really nice in many ways because the vocal is just there. It is there. And you, in a song that was super dense, this would be perfect. If this was like EDM-y dance track and it had a little bit of like, energy to it, this vocal tone would be killer and probably worth making a note of. But I think for this more organic, just relax it all a little bit. Wonderful work, Stephen. And as I always say, I don't mind saying it again, and I think it's worth knowing, especially if you're new, we have to really thank the guys and girls that take the time to do this because, not everybody, and there's no pressure, not everybody submits mixes. And I totally get it. I don't know if I was in this academy, I'd be like submitting a mix every week. I think the people that do, my hat's off to you. And, we can be all a little shy. Believe it or not, this loud, brash Englishman can be shy. I know it might sound silly, but I was a shy kid, for instance. I've grown into this personality. But anyway, to cut a long story short, I love the fact that you all put yourselves out here and just give us great work and allow us to get in there and critique it so that we can all learn. So Stephen and Juan, so far, I really appreciate it. All right, next up is Kenneth Hugh. And Kenneth Hughes says, not sure what happened in to last post, might have gone belly up with the server transfer. All feedback is welcome, and thanks in advance for listening. And then F, another great Academy member, has commented. All right, let's give it a listen. Kenneth Hugh with the galleries, The Catalyst.
You once lit me up like a cigarette and you burned me down and now there's nothing left. You were the one who put a spark to this, you were the gasoline, you were the catalyst. Cigarette, but you burned me down and now there's nothing left. You were the one who put our spark to this, you were the gasoline, you were the catalyst. Light me
quite fantastic in many, many ways, because the ultimate thing, and I'm seeing everybody's comments, and I think we all think the same thing, so we can talk about the low-end management stuff in a minute. But what's interesting is it's really brash in the mids, in a probably slightly over-the-top way. But again, what's beautiful, by the way, I don't get anything from talking about Adams in a good or a bad way, or any of the speakers, as you know. I have some emotional attachment to some speakers. Getting the AR-18s was a big deal for me, being such a huge Hugh Padgham fan. Talking Kenneth Hugh. Wow, Hugh Padgham, Kenneth Hugh. It's a Hugh day. Anyway, Hewitt. All right, so back on track. But what is interesting is they do have the mid-range that I grew up listening to. So they're on the verge. This is like the mix is on the verge. It's probably 3 or 4%, 5%, say, for the sake of it, a little bit too brash in the high mids. But it is close to how I recorded it and how I envisioned it. It's always a tough one. You know me, I've been very, very critical, and I will stand by it, of a lot of mixes, rock mixes of the late 90s and early 2000s. Some of them are very difficult to listen to now on the radio, and especially with like small devices like cell phones and laptops. The additional splashiness that you hear was exciting on those days. For those of you who remember, those mixes of that period, it was very, very common for the out choruses to go, shh, have this shimmer of overheads, which sort of sounded exciting at the time. Now it's kind of unbearable with these devices that we're listening on. And compared with like modern recordings, it seems almost somewhat amateur. But there is a reason for it. It was all about the excitement factor of just like, once you're in a song and you're kind of nodding your head and you're really getting into it, that extra shimmer gets to be like, yeah, it's like a shout. It's like a scream, because high mids are where our ears are most sensitive. So I do think about that in those terms. When I'm recording and mixing rock records, it's always more aggressive in those areas. It just is. And nobody wants a really soft, boring guitar sound, and they don't want a soft, boring snare. They want the snare to be like crack. They want the guitars to be rah and like ripping. So I think Kenneth has got a lot of it really right. But what's interesting is it's just a fundamental issue, isn't it? The kick actually has a decent, not necessarily everything, but a decent amount of low lows. The reality is like, I wonder, Kenneth, I don't know if Kenneth is here. Do we believe it's possible that Kenneth's room has a dip in the sort of 80 to 150 area? Because the bass guitar is non-existent there. It's just gone. So you have a kick thumping away, you have mid-range guitars ripping, but there's like an absolutely massive dip in that area. So like if we go and grab, let's go and grab a C4, for instance, good old-fashioned C4. Oh, you know what? We've been showcasing a lot more recently, and I think it's worth it. Let's go and get our friend Steven's Infinity EQ. I like this EQ. I do. I know there's Fab Filter. I know there's Waves. I know everybody's got these kinds of things now, but I kind of like his one. Okay, so I'm going to go to like the 100-ish area. I'm going to narrow the EQ to about here. Maybe a little bit wider. Let's turn it off for a second. Let's give a listen. So we'll go into the track. Yeah, I'm just wondering if Kenneth's room is lying to him. Can you hear me? Okay, so I'm talking over this. So I'm going to go to the 60 area. I think a mastering engineer could just add a little bit of 60 in there, not as much as I'm doing, 50 and 60, and get the kick to shine. But here's where the issue lies. Turn it off again. It's here. It's not even about adding more low end to the bass. It's about the fact that the bass isn't even, I don't even know if the bass is mixed in there loud enough for us to grab hold of. I mean, if I was mastering this, I would probably be adding so much stuff. Yeah, there's not really anything to grab onto it, which is, so it's in the mix process. I think we need to get in there, Kenneth, and get that bass guitar and find kind of an 80. I mean, look, so if it's just do something really stupid and generic, we'll grab the R bass, for instance. So just grab that quickly. Right above me, really obvious. And I mean, that's a massive boost. That's like 15 dB at 80 hertz, and I still don't hear a defined bass guitar. So I do wonder. I mean, Kenneth, I like your mix. I like the excitement. I like the way you're envisaging it. Wow, easy for me to say. I do. I feel like you've captured the spirit of an exciting high-mid rock and roll song. I think you can maybe dial it back ever so slightly on the high mids, on the guitars, etc. But yes, it needs a little girth, a little, down there. But the bass is just not in the mix. It's barely audible. And even with that massive, like 15 dB at 80 hertz, it was like I heard like a little bit of low end on the guitar being brought up. I heard a little bit more in the kick drum coming up, and I barely heard any bass guitar. So I've got to ask Kenneth. Is Kenneth here? I keep asking, but I'm going to look over. It needs bass. It needs a bass guitar, and it's just a fundamental thing. I think until you've got the bass kind of thumping along in there, what you're going to find is a lot of the mix notes you might get from us would actually be kind of counterproductive because, like everything, things work together and you've got to get to a global issue. Unless you've got an absolutely perfect mix and you're, well, not perfect, but a really well-balanced mix, and you're talking about individual elements where maybe this has to come up in volume, this needs a different EQ move, this needs a little extra panning, unless you're doing that, you're really getting into a global problem. And the reality is with that, Kenneth, is the bass guitar. If anybody talks to Kenneth, let him know. It did sound good, Andrew, with the bottom end in, but it's still just, I couldn't hear a defined bass. So not only do I want the sort of 80 to 100 round bass tone in there, I also want to hear a bit of nose, a bit of 700, a little bit of 1K, a little bit of 1.5K can help. Maybe even a little bit of 350 to glue it to the guitars. Yeah. Ray says, getting bass correct, and the hardest thing for me is either busting my speakers or non-existent, even with the R bass and the MV2. Interesting. It must be your room, Ray. It must be like, so, if you've got an R bass and an MV2 and you're super controlled it and you've high passed and you've got it like really controlled, the only thing that's going to happen is if you're turning it up and it suddenly explodes, it's because your room is probably like picking up that frequency and amplifying it, because that shouldn't really be an issue in a pretty good room. None of us have, and nor should any of us have, anechoic chambers for control rooms, but a decent-ish, not too bad control room, that well shouldn't give you that problem. If the bass suddenly is either A, not loud enough, or B, booming all over the place, there's got to be something about your room where it's just kind of amplifying specific frequencies. So maybe headphones, maybe car test, and obviously doing some additional acoustic treatment to your room. Paul Nielsen says, bass is the reason I use an 18-inch subwoofer behind my 5-inch monitors. Overkill, some would say. Billy Decker has a massive subwoofer behind his Mackie speakers. Yes, I can't use my room, spare bedroom. Okay, yeah. Yeah, it's going to have to be headphones for you. You know, there's always a resonance about 130, says Christopher. So is that your room that's doing that? Must be very common because somebody else is saying, Danielle is saying there's a room resonance at 125. And Ray says, I use headphones only. Okay. Anitra says, I control the room. The room doesn't control me. Nice. All right. Great work. Kenneth, let us know. Definitely bring it up in conversation with other Academy members. And maybe on the next mix, make a point of pointing it out when we're doing it. And we can get in there and help with the low end. Okay, Ed Krause says, hello, Warren and fellow plappers. Here's my take on Chase K's Lonely One. I decided to separate the lead vocal into 2 tracks, one for verses and one for choruses. I did this because I wanted to build some contrast between the two. Love that. That's a Mark Ender trick. When he used to mix on the console, he'd always have them separated tracks, and he would treat them differently. Maybe I haven't talked to him recently about it, but I'm sure he does the same thing inside of a DAW. The verses have more mid-range in them, while the choruses more shimmer to make the falsetto stand out more. I also added a subtle flange to the chorus vocals. Nice. Timing it with the BPM of the song. Oh, you're building up something here, Ed. Be careful. I'm getting very excited to hear this. My goal was to make the song as pop as possible, but I felt I may have come up short in this regard. In hindsight, I can hear my classic rock influences creeping in. Something I have to stop doing. I do the same thing. When I did the hip-hop mixing course with Matt Weiss, do you remember that? I mixed it like it was a rock song. And he was like, he thought it was comical. Because he's like, in hip-hop, you know, the drum sounds are part of the production. So you don't turn them into regular kick drum sounds because then you're taking away from what is unique about hip-hop. So I hear you. Any thoughts? This is a song mixed to rock. Is the balance off? All input is welcome, good, bad, ugly, or otherwise. Thanks again, Warren, and to all the wonderful plappers who make this community so special. Excellent. Let's give it a listen. Lonely One.
I guess the party's over, the drinks are gone, and we're hungover. It doesn't seem as fun now, a little sadder, a little lonely. So this is getting older. I don't wanna be the lonely one. I don't wanna be the lonely one.
All right, since I left the mic on, and to give all respect to Ed Krause, who's doing great work, let's start it again from the top without you hearing Warren doing this in his chair. I was like bouncing around like that. So, out of respect for Ed, we're going to start again from the top without the mic on during the performance.
I guess the party's over, the drinks are gone, and we're hungover. It doesn't seem as fun now, a little sadder, a little lonely. So this is getting older. I don't wanna be the lonely one. I don't wanna be the lonely one. across the border, off the deep end, trying to find another, shrugging shoulders, trading numbers. So this year's getting older, each year a little colder. So this is getting older, each year a little colder, more weight upon my shoulders. I don't wanna be the lonely one, I don't wanna be the lonely
Very nice indeed, Ed. I love the detail. I'm going back to one section.
So this year's getting older, each year a little colder. I don't wanna be the lonely one, I don't wanna be the lonely one. I don't wanna be the lonely one. So this is getting older, each year a little colder, more weight upon my shoulders. I don't wanna be the lonely one, I don't wanna be the lonely one.
So what's interesting about it to me is, I mean, honestly, it's a really good mix. Ed's super talented, and I've watched him grow with great enthusiasm. It's been really, really exciting to see him. Honestly, Ed was nailing, I wouldn't say country, but it was like kind of a roots rock thing. For those of you who have been around here 2 or 3 years, you remember Ed kind of like really started to become really good at mixing that genre, like really, really good. And then a couple of times he would step out into other things, and he didn't quite get it as good as the sort of more rootsy rock, Americana, country-ish kind of stuff. And don't get me wrong, I mean, it's such a grand kind of, all-encompassing genre, but that's what he was excelling at. And I feel like some of that's creeped into here. And it isn't necessarily a bad thing. But I think the only thing for me, Ed, really, that's just screaming at me is the drums. I love the sound of the snare. I think I don't know, probably everybody, snares are such a divisive thing, aren't they? I've made several jokes about it over the years, where people have their favorite snare sound. They're like, they don't say I only like, they say I like so-and-so snare. And, you know, I always, as you always hear me say, you know, you've got to learn to embrace. Sometimes it's small ping, and other times it's big boof and everything in between. And sometimes it's tons of reverb, sometimes it's gated reverb, and sometimes it's just dry as a bone, and everything else in between. I like the snare on this. I feel like the kick has the right kind of prod. Even though he's saying he's making it a bit more rock, it doesn't feel like metal. It doesn't feel like all 50 and 60 hertz and totally scooped with ticky 7K on the kick. It's quite nice, but to me, I get pulled out of the zone every single time a tom fill comes in, and it's like, boom, you know, just like really like shakes me to the core. I'm like, what happened? You know, so I think that is something that could definitely be worked on. You know, just bring those toms in. I think once you bring them down, you should be okay, but you might want to get in there and just maybe control the ring a little bit. But at the moment, I think that sustained ring is literally just because it's sitting right on top of the mix. Here's the mix and the toms are sitting on. Now, just to talk about that for a second, just all for a little bit of a joke, but kind of the truth. I was working with Ulrich Wild in like 2000. He was recording at my studio. He was working with, blanking on the name. He came to my studio. That's how long I've known Ulrich, since the 90s. This is about 2000. He comes to my studio and he's working with a big metal band. You know, like a big metal band, and I don't remember what they were called. It was that new metal period of the late 90s, early 2000s. And when he was doing the rough mixes, he said to me, he goes, "Are those toms too loud?" And I was like, maybe. And then he turned to me and looked me straight at me. He goes, "Can toms ever be too loud?" And I think there's a little bit of truth to that. When something has just the right amount of attack, like a tom, and not too exceptionally sustained, like controlled sustained, you can definitely get away with those toms, like Queen. You know, we know and love Queen. Having Queen, like having those toms be sitting so far out in front sometimes is quite comical, but also absolutely amazing. So I think one of the things, reading back and remembering Ed's commentary about coming at this song from a rock perspective, that's probably the single biggest thing that was a hangover from that rock perspective. He's got the big, boomy, massive toms, but unfortunately, or the reality is this is essentially a little bit more of a pop song. So Ed, tuck those toms in a little bit more. I think once they're tucked in, you won't have to worry so much about the EQ. There's a part of me that thinks they're a little bit boomy, but it could be a lot to do with the volume. You know, once it's sitting in there, it might just be that boom and that sustain is just perfect. Well, listen again to that same section.
So this is getting older.
Yeah, so as Peter Samuelson is like I say, he's like my mind reader and always says either something I've said, about to say, or could say. Yeah, I agree. There's a tone on this area here. It's like I'm going to the area to talk about it, and then Peter surmises it. Listen to the bass. It's got a going on here.
So this is getting older.
There, it's super pronounced.
Each year a little cold.
So it's a weird resonance, because on this note,
Each year a little.
it's a little sticking out, but not too bad. But on this one, it's so over the top. And it's probably around about 160, wouldn't you say, Peter? It's just kind of, it's, and that could be with the R bass, you know, with the octave 160, 320, 640. It might be that. What are we going to do? We'll just grab, what should we grab? I suppose, let's go and grab, just leave the slate up all the time, shouldn't I? I like using the slate because I know it's affordable. Not everybody in here has expensive, expensive plugins. Yeah, it's the two areas. So it's 80 where the initial obvious R bass is happening. So 80 and 160 is a super pronounced. As you can see, there's a dip. There's a big boost there at about one. Let's move it. About 160 and 80. So probably what is happening is that 80 boost on the R bass needs to be tamed, and then it's doing, the 160, and I'm sure, yep, there it is, 320. Look, it's here, yep, in all the areas. So the thing with the R bass is it's a beautiful, beautiful thing, and we love that 80 boost, but you've got to be really kind of careful with it, because that's what happens. You get those kind of overtones where you get the octaves that it's introducing going a little bit crazy. So what I would suggest there is, like, that's why I like the MV2, and it's also why I high pass going into the R bass. So what I'll do is I'll go to like 60 and high pass gently into it, so it's not boosting too many low lows. And then I go into the R bass. I don't go to the default setting, because the default setting, as you heard earlier when we were trying to put bass back into a mix that had the opposite, had no bass, it can really go nuts. The preset is awesome, but it's so massive. So just take it back down, then start introducing it back in. And if you do get that little excessiveness there, that's where MV2 will come in, because the MV2 will control those kind of spiky notes. And then the low information on the MV2 will bring it up. So suddenly now the difference between an 80, 160, 320 boom on occasional notes will now be controlled by the high level on the MV2 and the low level on the MV2. I'm going to open it up. It's interesting. Every major mixer I talk to about this all goes, this is the plugin. These, when we had that conversation, Ant Sheps and I, R bass, MV2, L2, then you can use stock plugins by anybody. And you could argue about the L2. Some people prefer other limiters, but regardless of that, without getting into a massive discussion, there's just what this plugin does is relatively unique. So yeah, what you'll do with the bass is you'll grab this over here and you'll control the high level information here. So suddenly those boosting bass notes, and then the low level stuff, which is the notes that aren't getting as aggressively boosted, can now come up in volume. The MV2 is a lifesaver. I absolutely love that plugin. So yes, we've got to control that. But yes, Peter, thanks for pointing that out. Warren, would you add EQ before or after the R bass to do anything different? Yes, the controlling going in, just controlling the low end going into the R bass, because the thing is, the R bass is, like I said, it's boosting 80 and above, but it's also bringing up a lot, because that 80 is quite wide. It does bring up a lot of 60 and even 40, which is not a problem. I don't remove that. I don't high pass a bass at 60 hertz like a brick wall, and then make the kick drum fit at 60. No. You want that low end in there. It sounds beautiful. You just want to control it. So a high pass going into the R bass, I'll boost with the R bass, but again, I bring it down quite dramatically and just start feeling where it starts to feel big. Then I put the MV2 immediately after it. First thing I do is take the low level information up of some of those notes that are dropping out, and then take the high level information and then reduce that boost on the 80 and the 160, 320, etc., etc. Great work. Really, really good. Toms down, and maybe work on them being boomy, control the bass so it's more even. Wonderful work. All right, next up is Michael Wolf. And Ed, it's great seeing you move from genre to genre and take what you've learned in other genres and apply it. I really don't think that you made that too rock. I know you were concerned about that. I think the only real out and above kind of rock thing was just the big boomy toms. All right, next up is Michael Wolf. And Michael says, hello, Warren and fellow Plappers. This song was so much fun to work on. The arrangement is deceivingly simple, and balancing everything proved to be a challenge. I'm quite happy with the result, however. Would love to hear everyone's thoughts. Great. And then Russell came in with a ton of great information. That's Wonderful. I love it. It's what makes this community so great. Thank you, Russell, for getting stuck in there. All right. Here's Michael's Everybody Knows. Our good friend Christina, who just had a child, I think, maybe 9 months ago now. old Lyco a lot. I'm reading everybody's comments. You probably saw I'm just dancing around like mad. It's been interesting because I'm going to go on one of my famous tangents, but growing up being a Gen Xer, that there's this Chris. I don't know. You're just a few years younger than me. I know you are. You're younger than me, probably 10 years younger. But those of us from the UK, because this isn't a uniquely English thing, but those of us from the UK, reggae is pretty freaking huge. It's a massive thing. I mean, we have an enormous Caribbean population, particularly obviously Jamaica and many other parts of the West Indies. Culturally, Notting Hill, the Carnival, it's a big deal. Massive Caribbean or Caribbean, depending how you want to pronounce it, influence. And, growing up at my age group, being like 7, 8, 9, 10, first getting into music, two-tone was huge, absolutely massive. And so I grew up listening to Bob Marley, Steel Pulse, Handsworth Revolution, obviously, what an album, Aswad, all of that stuff is just ingrained into me. So you'll notice like recently, we've had a really tough time recently losing a lot of great artists, but a lot of Caribbean and artists, and of course, reggae artists, etc. So it's been interesting because obviously every time we lose one, I'll maybe, not always, I try to, I'll post about it and people are like, oh, wow, I didn't realize you're into that. I think it's probably, Chris, maybe you can speak to this. It's probably something that people aren't aware of living in America, but in England, particularly in the South, and anybody that's in and around London, it's huge, absolutely huge. It's in everything, and huge fan. So my feeble attempts at trying to play, that, with a dum-dum-dum-dum-boom bass line goes back to me, wanting to be, either Sly Dunbar or Robbie Shakespeare. I mean, both would have worked for me. We used to just sit there and do things that you can't say publicly, involving Rizzler papers. I'm not saying that happened, and listen to a lot of dub. I mean, it was crazy. Go to see shows. I mean, it was a great time to be in the UK. Music was frickin' awesome. And I really like what Michael did. I feel like Michael, look, I agree with everybody, but I like his vocal tone. I like that, it's got that SSL compression kind of on the vocal. Madness, yeah, madness. The beat. I mean, all the ska, all the two-tone, all the reggae artists. It was a great time. And Peter's pointing out again, yeah, in the 80s and 90s it came back. Oh, yeah, the low end, Chris. Woo! Do-doom, do-doom, boom. Those notes used to hit. The whole floor would shake. I like the vocal sound, and I agree. So, a couple of people said, that, and I agree. The percussion is pretty, it's pretty consistent. It's pretty loud. But I sort of like it. One of the difficulties for those of you who haven't mixed this song is the AC really on.
I did turn it on. I think I
yeah,
pull it down.
it's like really hot in here, everybody. I might wear a t-shirt to work. I think I've done like one video of a t-shirt on, haven't I? Oh, now it's on. Yay. But anyway, we've been having big, Karen will tell you, we've been having these advisories to like not use your AC because it's been so hot here. But last night it poured with rain. Did you notice that?
I did, out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. I got home about 11 o'clock at night. I go upstairs and I'm just like sitting on the bed. And suddenly there's, I'm like, what just happened?
And it didn't even like build up to it. It just, boom, it was there.
It was just like pouring with rain. And then 5 minutes later it stopped.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was it. Hey, everybody, Southern Comfort, California rained last night for 5 minutes. It was really, really crazy. But anyway, to cut a long story short, yes, I agree. The djembe and stuff is kind of loud. But I also think it's really, really well mixed. I think like Michael kind of got what was going on here. It's a tough one though, because once that bass comes in, see, I missed that down, down, da 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 boom. That low lows. I don't know. I think I would. I think I would take Michael's vocal sound and put it into my mix and be very happy. I think Michael. I think you got her voice. You can hear the compression, but I like the way I can hear it. I can hear that little pat pat pat, just a bit of the attack, but then it's super smooth as well. I think Michael mixed the vocals really, really well. Same with the backgrounds. Now, could you argue? Yes. That the vocals and the backgrounds could just come up a dB and a half. I think what I would do, Michael, is I would do two things. I would keep this mix. I would go to your session. I don't know what DAW you're in. I would save this mix one or mix one. Call it mix one, and then do mix two. Open it up. Bring all the vocals, backgrounds, lead vocal up 1.5 dB globally. Print it. Obviously, look at your master bus. If it's now giving you an extra dB of compression, pull the threshold up a little bit, split the difference on the threshold, print it again, have a listen. That might be the mix. But mix 3, just see if you can get in there on the bass and just add a little bit of subbiness to it. This is one of the few situations where, because it's a reggae style bass line, now don't get me wrong, I'm not a great reggae bass player, and I certainly I think I did this with the PV bass because it has a lot of low lows, and it's very consistent down there, and I love that PV bass. Need to use it more. Beautiful bass. Weighs a ton. And bearing in mind, if you've ever watched any classic reggae recordings from the 70s, they were using whatever gear they could beg, borrow, or steal. They were recording onto 8-track half-inch. You know, some of the best recordings ever made were done. The King Tubby stuff is like, it's verging on total distortion. You know, on the snare, but it's so amazing. And the timbales and everything is it's just like so thick, but it's probably recorded on half-inch tape. You know, it's just, that's all they had. They didn't have the real estate on the tape for 2-inch tape. They didn't have the money to have hugely expensive consoles and really expensive gear. So there's a sort of wrongness that I like, but I wouldn't mind, in this instance, that subbiness on the bass, if you can find a way of getting it, whether it be through a plug-in or just opening up the low lows. Yeah, Andrew's saying yes, more 50, less 80. Yeah, getting down there. It's one of those things, because it's just that da dum ba da boom boom dum da 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 dum. Every time it gets to that low note, I don't mind if it doesn't. I wouldn't say blows up. I'm not encouraging that it be 4 dB too loud, but just a little extra subbiness on it. That will make it feel really satisfying. And again, I'm not Mr. Reggae when it comes to bass playing. I know the parts I want, but I also know the great bass players had a touch and a technique, and it was all part of it. You know, they had the bass, they had this when I worked with Soup, he had strings that were brown, and I thought they were bronze. When I was sitting in the control room and he came in, Soup came in, I don't know if I can say all this. Is a family show? Is there too many young people here? But so Soup comes in, he's got, oh my God, was it a jazz or a precision? I'm blanking. Oh God. I think it was a jazz bass. Anyway, so Soup comes in and he's opening up his case and he brings out this bass, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, wow, he plays with like bronze wound strings on. That's incredible, bronze wound strings. So I go out there, and as I get closer to him and the bass, I realize those ain't bronze strings. Those are brown rusted strings. And it's just, so he gives me a DI, and this is his tone. There's like no top end, zero top end. It's just, it was beautiful. Don't get me wrong. He had that, and he had a Mini Moog bass synth, you know, and he would either give me the bass synth or the bass guitar, and it was just all low end, and it was so satisfying. So again, I'm not that guy. I'm not that player. I'm not that aficionado, but definitely see if you can create a little bit more of that, Michael. And this is the situation, and the reason why I keep bringing up this classic kind of reggae stuff is because one of the difficulties when we're talking about production, and in particularly mixing, is there's so much focus on everything, and I get it, but there's so much focusing on everything being even and balanced and perfect. However, the stuff that we love is not even and not balanced and not perfect. It's actually good if things step outside of it. I saw Chris having a discussion with some other people there about going to a show where the low end was so massive it rattled your guts. That's, you know, that's sort of what you have to do in these circumstances. There's tracks that I love that come on the radio now 20, 30, 40 years later, and I cannot believe how imbalanced and imperfect everything is. But it doesn't stop me loving it. But I've spent my lifetime trying to mix things perfectly. But the reality is like even the most famous songs of all time that we love, that are ingrained in us, it's not just about, you know, the whole discussion about gridding modern music and everything being in tune. That's only part of it. The other thing is there's an obsession with mixes sounding like they were mixed on, you know, in an anechoic chamber with like a mastering system of speakers. And whenever I have put up any speaker demos, everybody's always like, well, you know, I would never buy these because it's not perfectly flat at 3.57K. And I'm just thinking to myself, what do you mean? What's your room like? You know, do you know your speakers? Do you know your room? You know, and do you really want to make mixes where everything literally sounds like white noise? Everything at 0 dB? You don't. You know, those of you like Chris and others that are in like dance music areas, you don't want to have a flat mix. You want to have a mix where the low end is blowing you up. You want to have sounds that come in that just like add great excitement, and that's music. Anyway, a long discussion as per usual. I did warn you it was going to be a tangent, but I think, Michael, I love what you're doing with the djembe. I wouldn't change a thing. I would get some lows out of the bass, and I would bring the vocals up by 1.5 dB, all of them all over, and I think you'll have something really special. And Darren's saying cutting an area for the kick. You could try that. Maybe when the bass gets a bit bigger and boomier, maybe do a little tiny 1 dB kind of like sidechain compressor on it. Don't go too crazy, because the last thing you want is like, you know, ducking it so much that it just feels like artificial, you know. Ken Allen says, my work interferes sometimes with Feedback Friday. I agree. Chris says, in reggae, the kick doesn't always have lows in the 40 to 50 area. Exactly. Some are more focused around that 100 definitely area. Definitely. There is room for the bass guitar subs, but consistency is important for booming lows. Yep, I agree. Really, really good. Great work, Michael. Love the vocal tone. Love what you did with the djembe. You know, maybe that digga guitar at the end can come down.
Everybody knows, 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 everybody knows.
That one, that one. No, it doesn't have a kick drum. It has the low end of the djembe. So that's what we're calling the kick drum. So when you're playing a djembe, I own one, and obviously I've recorded it with, who haven't I recorded with? I recorded it with, I'm blanking on his name. Dave Matthews, percussionist, really famous percussionist, completely blanking, and that is the kick drum, because it's the difference between playing it, on the top or getting the and that's your kick drum. So that the low is your kick drum for the from the djembe. But anyway, so you can treat that in exactly the same way as you would a kick drum, and that's what we did. When I mixed it, I had it coming through channel 1 on the console, and I was triggering the DBX 120 XT for the subs. And it was a battle. I was having a battle between getting the lows on the bass guitar and the lows on the bottom end of the djembe. I also did things like you can gate them. You could do sidechain compression. So every time the top played, it ducked the low end of the djembe. And some people will do the opposite, which is difficult because, of course, quite often the top end of the djembe is playing at the same time as a low end. So you have to be really careful what you do. But yeah, it's always a battle. But I think the djembe worked well, and I liked the low end on the djembe. I felt it was really, really good. I think extended low end on the bass guitar is what's going to make this absolutely fantastic. All right, great work. Next up is Anita with Bulletproof. And Anita says, here's my mix of Bulletproof. It's basically a straight mix with some creativity thrown in. Let me know what you think. Excellent.
Bring me down, 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 to stand. Hey, hey, yeah. Hey, 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 oh, 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 hey, 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 oh. Time to think for myself, I'm moving on. Hey, I'm bigger and stronger now that it's all gone. Step aside, watch out for this train. Don't go bricks in the hood, but we're sure to make it rain. Flipping a clip of different new sounds, as if we ain't got a limit, cause we don't like those limits. Never drop it, don't stop because the beat don't keep knocking, cause I'm raw bandit. Dub funked it, and then it became a hit, which then led me to the Ritz. Doesn't take a genius just to know when to quit. You got heart, so you did quit when you could quit. Now you're looking at us, saying all you ever tried to do was bring me down. So I turned around, and then you shot me in the back, saying, ooh, if I could have told you that I'm not afraid of anything you do, cause I'm bulletproof, bulletproof. Yeah, yeah, hey, 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 oh, 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 hey, 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 oh. Go and check your facts, I'm sick of the way you act, smack back, same pack with the cards stacked against you. Everybody's looking for those answers that you seem to provide, but I've seen your side and I've heard all your lies, and I don't mind seeing through these new eyes. The bulletproof state of mind is where I choose to reside. Saying all you ever tried to do was bring me down, so I turned around and then you shot me in the back, saying, ooh, if I could have told you that I'm not afraid of anything you do, cause I'm bulletproof, baby. I said all you ever tried to do was bring me down, so I turned around and you shot me in the back, saying, ooh, if I could have told you that I'm not afraid of anything you do, cause I'm bulletproof, bulletproof. Show what you got for the people, my brother. Go and check your facts, I'm sick of the way you act, smack back, same pack with the cards stacked against you. Everybody's looking for those answers, and you seem to provide them, but I've seen your side and I've heard all your lies, and I don't mind seeing it through these new eyes. The bulletproof state of mind is where I choose to reside, yeah. Saying all you ever tried to do was bring me down, so I turned around and then you shot me in the back, saying, ooh, if I could have told you that I'm not afraid of anything you do, cause I'm bulletproof, baby. Well, I'm so bulletproof, bulletproof. And that's how it's done.
Fantastic, Anita. This is a wonderful, wonderful mix. I mean, you've gone to town on it. It's big, it's loud, it's proud. It's like smacking you in their head. Translates really well onto the Adams. As you can tell, at the moment, I'm moving a lot between the Adams speakers and the headphones, more than I normally do. Normally, I'm always happy with these headphones. I know these headphones. Are they complete hi-fi? No. I mean, I have those Focal $1,300, $1,400 headphones. Those are super hi-fi, but I don't enjoy them as much, not for working. They're what you do when you put on and you listen to, like, you know, orchestral works and Genesis, you know, Nursery Crime and Crimson and stuff like that. That's what I use those headphones for. Anyway, it's really great. The only thing really is just controlling a little tiny, eeny, weeny bit on the toms. And just in general, just a little tiny bit of boominess, like ever so slightly. I mean, I feel like if you're doing something on the master bus, which is bringing out some of those low lows, keep it. Don't do anything different, because I feel like as a whole, there's a warmth to your mix that I really am enjoying. So don't adjust whatever's going on the master bus. Obviously, there is some stuff going on because it's quite heavily limited, which I honestly don't have a problem with as long as it sounds good. I don't look at my music, and I know that you're all smart enough in here to not look at music. Some of my favorite music has tons and tons of ridiculous dynamics between sections, and other stuff smacks you over the head. In just the same way we were talking about earlier, how great reggae can have so much low end in it that it will blow up your speakers, but you still absolutely love it. Well, I feel very similarly about that with this. I think it's really wonderful.
Turned around and you shot me in the back. Said, ooh.
So let's go back to that little tom fill there.
Down, so I turned around and you shot me in the back. Said, down, so I turned around and you shot me in the back.
So just maybe a little tiny less low end boost on that, just a bit. A little tiny bit. See if you can just pull out some of that 350 a bit more, particularly to the tom over here, and then see if you can dial in a little bit more attack. So by doing that, you won't need so much volume. You'll just get like a little bit of the snap on it.
Down, so I turned around and you shot me in the back. Said, ooh, if I...
Now it's interesting. There's periods of the song, like there, for instance, where it's quite mono with the electric, you know, almost pan to the center.
Down, so I turned around and you shot me in the back. Said, ooh, if I could have told you that I'm not afraid of anything you do, 'cause I'm bulletproof, bulletproof. Yeah, yeah. Hey, 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 hey. Oh, 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 oh. Hey, hey, hey.
So what's interesting is like, it feels like the bass and the kick are both really, really good, but one of them needs to compromise slightly more. So what I'm hearing, I'm sure you can hear the same thing if we go to this area.
In the back, said, ooh, if I could have told you that I'm not afraid of anything you do, 'cause I'm bulletproof, bulletproof. Yeah, yeah. Hey, 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 hey. Oh, 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 oh.
It's a tough one, you know, and the sample's just overtaking the live snare. So duck the sample down about 1.5 dB and bring the live snare up about 1.5 dB, and it will still give you a pretty similar sound to what you've got. But when on those snare fills, you won't hear quite so much. It'll be a little bit more natural. So readdress it. So sample down 1.5 dB, live snare up 1.5 dB.
Hey, 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 hey. Oh, 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 oh. Hey, 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 hey. Oh.
So what I'm hearing there is a little bit of 80, which is fine, but I'm hearing it in the kick drum a little bit as well. Do 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 do. That's in the kick, not just the bass. So go to your kick drum sub group and just grab kind of the 80 area. And it doesn't matter if you've already done it on individual elements, do it on the whole sub and just pull out about 3 dB of 80 hertz on the kick sub and widen the bell just a little bit. So maybe it's just coming down about 70 and just going up. And it might be that actually you might want to come up a little bit higher to like 85 or 90 and have a slightly wider bell. But that, I think, will get rid of that gong, 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 gong that you're hearing in the kick. You know, boom, 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 boom. And nothing to do to the bass. And I think that, because I love the low end you've got going on in the kick. Like if I go... Okay, so there's a little bit of overlap going on there. Not all of you are in probably circumstances where you can hear that lows. Oh no, I'm sure you did pull all that stuff out, Anita. I mean, what you're in a situation here is like, this is a completely viable mix with the low end. It sounds really, really good. We're in what we used to always call the headphone test, you know, where I've mixed the song, I'm really happy with it, and now I put on a pair of headphones and I'm just going in there and tweaking. And sometimes, just so you know, for those of you who are new here, we get into like this little detail stuff because the mix is really good and really close. So now you can get into some real finessing. So this is the finessing stuff. So I would increase your high pass on the bass ever so slightly. So now we got the opposite here, where at 53, there's a little bit too much bass in the kick drum. So what we're going to do is we're going to slightly increase the slope on your bass guitar. So if you've got like a 3 or a 6, go to a 9. And if you're doing it at about 50, maybe move it up to 60 and just let it slope there. So those are the two things, and they're subtle. And because you're really close, if we turn this off and just listen. I mean, it's really close. And to be honest, there's a lot of commercially available music that's coming out now and probably playing on Spotify, which isn't as good as this. I mean, let's be honest, there's a lot of stuff that comes out and you're like, yeah, it's pretty good, you know. And again, I'm not one to, as we were talking about earlier with the reggae stuff, like say this is right or wrong. But, you know, what happens with the reggae stuff is they take an instrument and they use it to explode. An EDM, 808s, comes in, boom, you know, but if they had an 808 exploding and a bass synth exploding at the same time, it would just be a muddy experience. But what I'm saying, wrong mixing is right, having things too loud. But here we've got just a tiny bit of competition going on between the elements. And Anita, it's great. It's really, really tiny amounts. Yeah, great work. Cool. So yeah, readdress the snare. I'm fine with the panning. It is interesting because it's mono on the guitar and then it goes wide. That actually works okay.
Then you shot me in the back, said, ooh, if I could have told you that I'm not afraid of anything you do, cause I'm bulletproof, bulletproof. Yeah, yeah, hey, 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 oh.
Yeah, just readdress that snare for us. Live snare up, sample just underneath. So it's like a 3 dB split because what's happening is you're bringing up the live snare a dB and a half and the sample snare down a dB and a half. And you should get similar volume. It might be that the live snare doesn't quite have the body and the volume of the sample, of course, because that's a sample. So once you've done that switch, A-B between your two mixes, and it might be that you want to now take the overall balance and bring them both up together as a unit. It might be that the snare sounds a little bit more natural, but isn't quite as loud. So sometimes what happens when I do that, I have really consistent samples going crack, crack, and then I have a live snare, which even with compression is like boof, boof, boof. You know, it's coming in and out. So what you might want to do is just, once you've switched those levels, is maybe bring up the snare all over about a half. I think, to be honest, if you did 1.5 dB down on the snare sample, 1.5 dB up on the live sample, live snare, now you've got a 3 dB difference between them, and then bring them both up together by 0.5 dB, possibly like a 0.7, which is the first kind of real audible amount. You'll probably have the snare will sound as loud as it does now, but more natural. Then go in on your kick drum, pull out, like I say, about 90. Pull out about 90 and just wide enough to grab the 70 and the 100, 110. Just pull out a couple of dB on your kick sub. Now go to your bass guitar and go to 60, I think, and just create a very gentle slope at 60. It feels like it's sloping at 50 at the moment. So go to about 60. And if you're already at 60, but it's only a 3 or a 6, go to a 9. If it's 3, go to a 6. If it's 6, go to a 9. On your slope, on the high passing. And again, these are subtle things, but I think they'll do really, really well. Then on the toms, just pull out a little bit more 350. Whatever you're doing with the bass boost, maybe slightly less on the bass boost, and then see if you can add a little bit more attack in there. All subtle things. But the reason why we're talking subtlety is because the mix is really good and super, super close. Great work. And as far as the low end, quote unquote issues, inverted commas, like I said, there's a lot of songs on the radio which are nowhere near as good as this on the low end. So great work. Yay. All right. Next up is David Howell. Hey, David. And David says, I think this got lost in the server freefall a couple of weeks back. Yeah, and I think there was, the way it worked up, the backup happens every few days. So there was definitely a period on the backup where a couple of things got lost. I think with the help of Patrick's drums, I also added some extra samples to kick and snare, as well as bass and guitar parts. It's mostly just creating some lift to the original feel without drifting too far away. Great song by Steve and drums by Patrick. Thanks for listening. Marvelous. Here we go.
Roll me, mama, roll me like a stone. Roll me till I can't find my own way back home. Love me, lady, love me like your own. Love me till I can't remember where I've gone. Trying to find a way out. I can't break free. Oh, this life is gonna be the death of me. Kiss me, honey. Kiss me like I'm dying, and kiss me till I can't remember why I'm crying. Rock me, baby, rock me through the night, and rock me till the sun rises, and I'll be alright. I'm trying to find a way out. I can't break free. Oh, this life is gonna be the death of me. I'm trying to find a way out. I can't break free. Oh, this life is gonna be the death of me. And it gets so lonely all the time. Just need somebody to ease my mind. And it gets so lonely, girl, I just want you to hold me through the night. Oh, can't break free. Oh, this life is gonna be the death of me. I'm trying to find a way out. I can't break free. Oh, this life is gonna be the death of me. Yeah, this life is gonna be the death of me.
You might be right.
Which one is this the Spire?
I was looking at the wrong song the whole time, thinking it was the audience. I think this is the Spire.
Okay, so is this the Spire? Does anybody remember the video?
I got it right here. The Death of Me.
Is the Spire?
Rise Up Spire version. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so there's something about the Spire which is fantastic, don't get me wrong, but if you recall, the Spire is like the mic's built into it, and it was like sitting on top of his keyboard as he was recording the song. And that's all fine, but the reality is that it's got a little bit of extra room tone in there, which is probably adding a bit of extra. Oh wow, you put up some of the multi-tracks. You remembered. Have you done
I
any
got there
others?
halfway by like the 5th song. I was like, oh crap.
How long we been doing this now? 4 years?
5?
5 years? Sorry, everybody. But who's winning the game?
Dodgers don't play till 7.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So anyway, getting back to the point, this is going to be a little bit of an EQ exercise on the vocal because, so Steve was actually sitting here like this, playing the keyboard. The keyboard was set up here, and the Spire was sitting on top. So he's singing like this. He's not singing into a traditional microphone. So there is, a bit of the room like this, and there's always going to be some additional resonances. If microphones were designed to be used like that for lead vocals, then they would come up with some other options and ways to fix it. But I think this is a perfect case, and I know this is not a cheap solution. It's a perfect case for Soothe. Using Soothe on the vocal could get in there and bring out some of that spikiness in the kind of 1.5K, where sometimes it just Jens says half pay for Eric today. There you go.
Oh, no, Jens!
So so basically Soothe would be perfect. You could get in there and get rid of some of that where it kind of rips your head off. To me, that's something I would definitely be working on. Let's have a quick listen.
Hold me through the night. I'm trying to find a way out. I can't break free.
Oh, Limbo says, "What's half of nothing?" I said, "Oh, so I don't have to pay you either."
No. Now I have to pay you.
Oh, great! If only he was getting paid nothing, that would be.
Oh,
A nod is as good as a wink to a blind bat. Here we go.
trying to find a way out. I can't break free. Oh, this life is gonna be the death of me. I'm trying to find a way.
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion about the B3 volume earlier on. And yeah, I think there's some automation stuff. The weird thing is, not the weird thing, that's a strange way of putting it, sorry. the main thing is getting that vocal sound to be just a little smoother. I don't mind it being a little bit narrowed because of the situation, recorded into a Spire sitting on top of a keyboard. I get that, and those are always going to be issues because of that. But I do think that the main thing I would address is just getting rid of the spikiness in Say No More, Say No More. Although that's also help, Dave. I can say no more. I say no more. All right, so...
Trying to find a way out.
Peter's saying some hall reverb might help. Yeah, could do. Bit of verb on it.
Trying to find a way out.
I think it's just getting rid of the spikiness, and I don't disagree. A bit more verb can maybe make it sit into it a bit more beautifully.
Trying to find a way out.
Karen, the Spire is that thing by Isotope where it's like this all-in-one unit. It's actually pretty nifty. If you can teach it, they sold very, very well with educators, in kids, and went into schools. They have been trying to have it cross over into guys and girls like us. It hasn't quite moved over here, and I understand why. People can do this with DAWs, but for younger people, like having your own computer, it's kind of nifty, because you just connect it to your phone or your iPad or your whatever, your what are they called? Tablet. Sorry, yes, take the tablet and just start recording. It's pretty special, and it does have its own hard drive, so you can do it without even using the software.
Trying to find a way out. I can't break free.
Keeps recommending some Pultec. Yeah, I mean, getting the lows from a Pultec plugin on the vocal could help as well. But I do really think it's a case of controlling the mid-range in order to do that. That would be the main thing I would address, and then you could get into some of these other comments that people were having, which are legitimate. But I think control that vocal, control that mid-range, add a bit more low-end girth to it, maybe a bit more high-end sparkle, but definitely low-end girth. Try some verb, as Peter says, to sort of sink it in a little bit there, and I think you'll get something really great. I'm going to use the restroom quickly. And what about a joke of the day from His Highness Sir Derek von Erickson? Now that he's woken up. Go on, Eric.
Have I though?
I don't know.
Oh. Headphones stuck in the wheel of the chair. Hello. Hello. Howdy. Joke of the day. You know what? I do have a joke. This one's from we went and did a studio tour, and we filmed it yesterday with Uri Gelman, who is an Academy member. And he was telling some music music related jokes to us, and one of them was, I mean, they were all funny, but one of them I was like, oh my god, I'm putting that down. That's great. Now I just got to remember how it goes and not screw it up. Let me see. Give me 1 sec. How's everyone doing? I want to double check and make sure I don't ruin this joke, because I think it's a good one. What do you call a monkey that loves Doritos? A chipmunk. Whatchamacallit? Okay. It doesn't pop up here. All right, I'll try my best. What's the difference between rhinos and orchestras? Uri, I saw you were on here earlier. I don't know if you're still on here. Hopefully I don't butcher your joke. But what's the difference between rhinos and orchestras? Well, with rhinos, the horns are in the front, the asshole's in the back. Ba-doom. there's a super long delay. So I'm just like, something about horns. Yeah. You guys are along the right track. That's the delay. Like you guys are barely like answering right now. But no, I still get a groan from Tom. Yeah, that was that's the joke of the day. Hopefully the arsehole part of it doesn't you know, offend. Really used on oh, has it really been used on Feedback Friday before? Did I use it? I don't remember. Yeah, it's like a 20-30 second delay. It's pretty gnarly. A lot of times when I'm like, I have my headphones on, yeah, no, I mean, that's the joke. I guess the conductor is the asshole, but I don't know. I wouldn't know. I'm getting there. There's still hope. Yes, as long as there's hope. As long as it's not declining and there's a little bit of a upward. Ed Cross says, I went for a joyride yesterday and took my in-laws to the airport. Oh, the in-laws. It's great when this section happens and everyone just starts putting their jokes in there. And you just start seeing all these jokes. But anyways, how is all of your days going? After this, we're gonna zoom on over to Brad Wood's place and film a little something that might come out next week, maybe. There's a lot of Atmos stuff popping up for us to film. So that is always fun. And it's crazy going into all the different Atmos rooms and hearing different speakers of Atmos. I can't tell the difference because I'm just so Eric is gaining in wisdom. I can't tell the difference in the way they sound because I'm still so like just the whole Atmos experience of sound coming from everywhere. That it just all sounds epic. Not that it wouldn't depending on the speaker, but like like Dave Way with his KRK Atmos setup, which KRK I didn't really see anywhere. Yeah, so lots of PMCs in Atmos rooms, but now it's like Dave Way with KRK Atmos, which KRK alone I don't really see in studios. The only other time was at the mastering engineer who's just down the street. I am blanking on his name, but he's done so much, and he has a huge KRK. I forgot which ones they are, but they're huge. That was probably the first time seeing KRK in like a professional studio. I'm used to just seeing them as student speakers. My speakers are KRK at home. The only speakers I've ever bought, and the only speakers I have. Same thing with Connor, KRK speakers. So I kind of like pieced together like, oh, I guess KRK are not like, a professional studio speaker or not trusted. I don't know. And then Kelly doing their own thing with eventually. Nashville was very hot. I think it's hot over here, but then Nashville is like soggy hot, if that makes sense. Like you just walk outside and you're just moist. And the worst part about, or yeah, the Nashville trips, they weren't selling alcohol on the plane. That's the only thing that helps me get through the flight. But no alcohol. I had to fly sober and was terrified. I don't know. I hear them talking a lot, Peter, about like Atmos, whether it's gonna go or stay. And some people think it's just a phase, and a lot of people are thinking it's a lot more than a phase, that it's here to stay. But who knows?
What was the
Yeah,
joke?
KV4.
How many Erics does it take to change an Eric?
It's one I got from Uri yesterday.
Yuri?
How do you pronounce it? Uri?
It's either Yuri or Uri, depends on where he's from.
So I just
That's okay. And what was the joke?
it is, what's the difference between rhinos and orchestras?
It's got to be something to do with horns. A rhino only has one horn, and an orchestra has one horn too many, or
Well, with rhinos, the horns in the front, the assholes in the back.
oh,
I told everyone. I don't.
Ay,
I don't
ay,
mean to offend.
ay.
It's just a joke. I'm not saying anything.
is Michael Garding here? Michael, did you hear that? Did you hear Eric's joke? Everybody, call Michael up now. He needs to be involved. That's the. I'll tell you another joke based on that same theory. What's the difference between a monitor engineer? What's the difference between a monitor engineer and a toilet seat?
No. idea.
A toilet seat A toilet seat only has to deal with one arsehole at a time. Anybody that's ever done live sound will understand that one. I need more of me in the monitor mix. Can you turn blah, blah, blah down? You got like one mix across the front. I need more of me. I need more than me. Yeah. Michael said, I heard, exclamation, exclamation, exclamation. Michael, what can I say? What can I say? My apologies to you. Yeah. All right. Next up is Michael Kroger with City Lights. And Michael says, here's my mix of City Lights. What a massive amount of tracks. It's the first time. Yeah, it is a huge. I could use my self-made SSL bus compressor clone on drums and main bus. Wonderful. And a Neumann W495 EQ clones on main bus. It's my automation interface for my studio console. I'm happy how they came out. Excuse me. As always, I appreciate every comment, hint, suggestion on this mix. Here we go.
The city lights are far behind, and I can see it now that I'm on my own. Wheels up, head for the future. No more rust in here with the lifeless. Dig deep, say what you're thinking. I'm not gonna follow. I'm not gonna follow. Take off, show me the stars. I'm ready to leave. I'm ready to leave the city. I'm flat broke. Show me the road to the good life, the good life, the good life. Take off, show me the stars. Away from the lights, away from the lights in the city. I'm flat broke. Show me the road to the good life, the good life, the good life.
It's a great mix. So there's a lot of in this particular mix. There's a lot of things that you have to battle with, and one of them, of course, is the density of the amount of tracks. It's interesting because when I was working with David on this, he wanted to do a lot of overdubs. He wanted a lush, rich sound, and I kept telling him that, of course, the phrase stuff that he was referring to, we didn't have that many overdubs, believe it or not. It was a lot more simplified. And, but, we went overdub-tastic on this, especially being in Sunset Sound for 3 days. I think we ended up doing a lot of fun things. And then we came back here and did guitars, or I did some additional guitars. I think one of the songs on this EP, or two of the songs, I ended up playing bass, guitars, etc., etc. All of that's good. However, it does make it a challenge to mix, as Michael pointed out in the message or in the comment. However, I do like what he's done with the snare. By focusing the snare mainly on the transient, that pa, 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 it does help it cut. But it gets lost sometimes, and then other times all I hear is the transient. So I think, Michael, the snare needs a bit more body in it, as well as the snap that you've got with that initial attack time. And you could just bring it up just a little bit because once you put some more body into it, maybe a tiny bit of saturation across the initial transient, you might have to you might find that it's louder, it's got more ring, but I think also it's going to have to come up generally across the mix. Occasionally it needs to come up a little bit more, but once it's got some more body in it, maybe it can be more of an even push-up. The tambourine's definitely at times loud. There's definitely a lot of extra percussion.
Away from the lights in the city of Flatbrook, show me the road to the good life.
There's definitely it's a tough one.
God, show me the stars. I'm ready to leave. I'm ready to leave the city of Flatbrook. Show me the road to the good life.
Oh, I like that. Jonathan says the song gives a sense of freedom. That was the idea. He was signed when he was super, super young and had a little bit of success. MTV licensed a lot of his tracks. So he had a little bit of success, had an early record deal as a teenager, early 20s. And, this was kind of his sort of coming of age. So that's a great thing you're pointing out there.
Follow. Take off, show me the stars. I'm ready to leave. I'm ready to leave the city of Flatbrook. Show me the.
No, I don't think it's 50,000 tracks, Anita. I think it's 62,000. No, there's a lot, yeah.
Follow. Take off, show me the stars. I'm ready to leave.
Yeah, I'm with Peter. The kick is a little muffled. I think a little bit of extra attack on the kick is not going to hurt. And the tiniest extra dB of subbiness to it in that 40 to 60 area. As we talk about, my DBX 120 XT actually pushes at 36 hertz, which is for most modern speakers about as low as they go, fairly easily. You'll notice most of these kinds of speakers that we've got up here usually read down to about 35 hertz. And beyond that, it's all bets are off, So I usually boost, we set it to about 36. And of course, it's not just purely a 36 tone, it's around the area. So it's a bit lower, a bit above. And I think a little bit of extra subbiness would be nice. A tiny bit on the kick, just a bit, because already crowded, already a lot going on. And then a more attack, more snap to it.
God, show me the stars. I'm ready to leave. I'm ready to leave the city of Flatbrook. Show me the road to the good life.
Yeah, with the high-end information, I always have a hard time in that kind of area. Could you hold on 1 second? I've got to field this. This is what happens.
God, stop, show me the stars. I'm ready to leave. I'm ready to leave the city.
So I think a bit more snap in there, a little bit more summerness on the kick. You're probably going to have to pull out some 80 to 100 on the kick to help the low ends come to life. But it's, considering how dense this is, it's pretty miraculous. But yeah, like you're saying, like everybody's saying, in that sort of 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 and above, we've got to be really careful with high frequency instruments and the top end of tambourines. I'm not a big fan of anything that really lives in that area. Beyond kind of, sizzle on cymbals, air on vocals. I don't think you need really a lot going on up there beyond that. It needs to live in just adding excitement and air to things. I think we've talked about this before, but big PAs, they don't have diddly damn squat going on above like 12K. It's like, there's this idea that, this super, super high frequency. No, it's a waste of time and energy, literally energy, for a PA system to reproduce super, super high frequencies up there. It's not what it's about. It's all mid-range and high mids and low end. And that's what you need to really experience it. So, yeah, when there's something in that 7 to 12 area, which is just a bit too peaky, it gets annoying. You hear me talk about that all the time. I don't like egg shakers. I don't like. I don't want to hear 7K and above. It drives me nuts. It takes me out of the zone. I just hear this. Hopefully that's high enough going on. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's like little ice picks hitting the side of my head. And tambourines can be like that, the high end. If I'm using a tambourine, I want a head on it, and I want it to be... Yeah, it can have the high end on it, but it must be in accordance with the more of the mid-range and the high mids of the tambourine. So, yeah, we've got to be careful with the super, super high frequency stuff. Probably don't talk about it enough because it's low-end management is more common. But, yeah, with the super high stuff, be careful on that, And it depends on your age group, of course. For most people, 45 and above, 12K is dipped pretty heavily. That's why I suggest a trick. You've seen me do it on a YouTube video of playing your mix at half speed. And we can do it here, for instance. Play it at half speed. So you hear that. You hear how loud that is at half speed? For any of you here that, and it's totally understandable over the age of 40, 45, the super, super high end stuff is now like at 6K rather than 12K and above, 6, 7, 8, you now hear. So imagine that in really super high frequencies being played to somebody quite young, like my son and my daughter. They're hearing 15 to 20K, definitely 15. Yeah, my son's 14. He doesn't use headphones too much. He's probably still pretty good up to like 16, 17, 18. My daughter's 6, so she's going to hear right up there. That to her is probably like, and probably killing her, I've been in the car with my son and listening to music, and I've just gone to click it one up. And he's like, Dad, it's so loud. And it's not that loud. But when you're 14, it's loud. I remember going to my dad's stereo system, and my dad he wasn't an audiophile, don't get me wrong. And we didn't have expensive stereo system. We just had a nice Sony that most people could buy. In fact, we were quite poor, as I'm sure you all know, have heard me talk about. But he had a nice Sony, good quality stereo system, not a Macintosh with quad stuff and everything, but it was nice. It was a good sounding. It was important to him to have good hi-fi. And I would always remember he would keep the bass and the treble flat, and he would never touch the loudness button. He just used to listen to things like at a decent level, and he wouldn't sit there and try and like EQ it. He would just play it back. And I always remember I'd go up to the stereo at like 7, 8, 9, 10, earliest memories, and just reach for that treble control and cut it about a quarter of the way back. It was just like some of the records of the time just sounded so bright to me as a child. I would always cut the treble, cut the treble, cut the treble, cut the treble. So, you know, and that was just flat records and with a not particularly bright hi-fi system. So, you know, we've got to be sort of aware of that. Look, I've seen talks with famous mixers. I'm sure you all have, all talking about this. You know, we're not here to bash any of the older guys. Like I can't hear the tambourines, can't hear the shakers, you know, and that's interesting and important. So we have to be very aware of that. But anyway, I'm waffling on too much about it. But what I like about this is like, Michael, it's not awful in that area, but it's interesting to talk about. And this is why I appreciate everybody who mixes all these different songs and has different approaches, because once again, Michael's allowed us to have a talk about a very important thing about as you get older, there's a natural hearing loss. It's just inevitable. And you're not going necessarily deaf. You're just not hearing the high frequencies either as loud as you used to or sometimes not at all. And that's okay. That is normal. I don't care. I've heard people tell me I can hear perfectly to 20K and I'm 65. Well, if you can, you're a freak of nature. Even if you've been swaddled in cotton wool and never heard a loud sound in your life, it doesn't work like that. As we naturally age, we do lose some of that stuff, and that's okay. That's absolutely okay. So it's just good to be aware of that. Maybe it'd be a good recommendation for everybody to play your mix back at half speed and see if you can hear some of that stuff. In Pro Tools, it's Shift Space Bar, but whatever you should be able to play them back. I'm thinking most DAWs, and then you're going to be able to hear, you know, 15K information is now going to be playing at 7.5K. 12K is going to be playing at 6K. So you'll start hearing maybe things that you're just sensing in there. Like I did a sweep in here on a couple of days ago on it, and I had everybody in the room, and we got to 12 and everybody was still hearing it. But as we got to like 14, 15, what you kind of was saying, well, I more feel it than hear it.
Yeah, and I thought that my hearing was like that was it for me, but yeah, when Connor said that, I can feel.
You feel it, yeah.
Barely.
So these guys are in their 20s. So at 15K, they're not like hearing it go beep. That's not 15K. I can't get up there, but they're feeling it. So that's guys in their 20s, you know. So anyway, I'm waffling on. I honestly think with the extra subbiness on the kick, a bit of attack on the kick, the snare with the initial transient controlled and a bit more body in it, and just bringing down some of the high frequency things and tucking them in, maybe even EQing them a little lower so they're a bit more mid-rangey. What I do sometimes with shakers and tambourines is put a little tiny bit of saturation on them and fold in some of that high end. So maybe try that. It's a wonderful mix though, and incredible work, Michael, for something that's so dense. Robbie was just joking that there was a shaker in his mix. It's okay. Chris says, a communist joke isn't funny unless everyone gets it. Okie dokie. Robbie Miller is next, who has the shaker in his mix. Hello, everyone. A lot of fun working on and mixing this multitrack. I found this particularly interesting as it's really pushed me to try and get creative to make this all a little more stereo. I hope the parts I played added the right feel to Warren's great performance. Well, first of all, thank you for saying it's a great performance. I appreciate it. Thanks for taking a listen. I hope it makes it into Feedback Friday. And if it does, give it to me straight, Doc. Here we go.
Caught you knocking at my cellar door. I love you, baby, can I have some more? Ooh, the damage done. blood to keep from running out. I've seen the needle and the damage done, a little part of it in everyone, but every junk is like a setting sun. I've seen the needle and the damage done, damage done.
That was lovely when it came back round again. I really enjoyed that. There is okay, so I think a couple of people have said this. It's definitely, the whole thing is very bright. It's acoustic guitar. You know, it's funny, we just had a whole discussion on brightness. And the vocal and the acoustic definitely have a like a razor sharp 7K-ish kind of to it and above. So it's a tough one. I mean, is that possibly something that was more in the mastering? Were you doing that on the master bus, or are you doing the individual things? I mean, it's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful work. Incredible overdubs. There's some interesting harmonies that you've created. And I kind of like them. Sometimes they sound a little wrong, where I feel like it was a minor that went to a major or a major that went to a minor. But I sort of like it. I like this kind of experimentation. I like this. I really do. Let's go to this section here, for instance.
I hit the city and I lost my band. I watched the needle take another man. Gone, gone, the damage done.
Love that little lead part. Tom was saying about the cymbal swell could come down. Yeah, it could probably come down like a dB and a half. I agree. Love that lead part. That's where there's a little bit of a rub going on for me. There was a rub a little bit earlier that I let go, but this one. And that is beautiful. Cymbal swell down there too.
I sing the song because I love the man. I know that some of you don't understand. Blood to keep from running out.
Yeah, I think the bass for me, pedaling on that is the only thing. That's the one thing I would change, and that's where the rub's coming for me. Just the bass pedaling on that. As far as the performance stuff is, otherwise the guitar overdubs are superb. Bass overdub is superb. And then it's just really a case of bring the cymbal down and controlling the overall brightness of the track. You know, the guitar gets a little brattle. That's like brattly brittle. It gets a little brittle, and so does the vocal gets a little brittle up there as well. Otherwise, amazing overdubs. Shaker wasn't too loud. You're okay. I think everybody was it. I read somebody said, "Oh, I was getting prepared for it to be too loud." Absolutely wonderful, wonderful stuff. Yeah, I'm really impressed. Robbie, can you let? I personally would figure out that pedaling note. That's just me. Otherwise, I think it's pretty special. I think it's a case of controlling a high end. And please send Derek Von Erickson the multi-track so he can post them up for overdubs. That would be amazing. Amazing. Wonderful work, Robbie. I really appreciate it. It's great having you in here. Next up is last but no means least is Mark. And Mark says, "Hi, all. Doesn't seem to be a separate forum for this Steve Magora song yet, but I found the Season 24 multitracks and thought I'd give it a go. Haven't used any samples, etc., as I considered the spirit of the thing was to go with a Lewitt recorded audio. It's great to get the chance to work on material for the likes of Steve Blair and, of course, Warren. Nice. Thanks, Mark. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to hear.
Sitting there with your arms crossed, I know you're wondering. It's hard to tell if our love's gone. You got me wondering too. 'Cause every time I try to talk, you don't wanna listen. You can't expect me, baby, to know what's going on, to keep holding on to you. So baby, won't you tell me, what's going on with you? Baby, tell me, what's going on with you? We've been right for a while now. It's a crying shame, crying shame. And are we just two more heartbreak players in another losing game? Oh, 'cause every time I try to talk, baby, you don't wanna listen. No, you can't expect me, baby, to know what's going on, to keep holding on to you. So baby, won't you tell me, what's going on with you? Well, baby, tell me, what's going on with you? Oh, baby, tell me, what's going on with you? Baby, tell me, what's going on with you? I gotta know what's going on. Baby, won't you tell me, what's going on with you? Oh, baby, tell me, what's going on with you? Baby, tell me, what's going on with you? I gotta know, baby. What's going on with you? 'Cause baby, I gotta know what's going on.
Oh, what a lovely, lovely way to finish off. I do really enjoy this song. If this is one that you haven't yet mixed, please do. I think you'll all absolutely enjoy this. This is such a wonderful, wonderful song. Yeah, Mark, thank you for doing it. Yeah, a few things. I think tiniest amount of low-lows on the kick, just a bit. I do like the kick. It's just kind of got a thud. It's kind of natural. It makes it feel a little less modern, but still modern. Do you know what I mean? It's more of a sort of 80 to 100 hertz kind of thump, thump, thump. But I think a tiny bit of subbiness to it, and maybe just a tiny bit more snap, a little bit of 2.5 on there, 2.5K, just a tiny bit. I think overall drums could maybe come up a dB. Just bring them up a dB. Without sounding like a lead guitar player, which I am, solo could definitely come up, and I would center it a slight bit. I do like the way you've got that verb going on the right-hand side, but the solo, you don't realize, even if it wasn't me playing, I know it's me playing, if it wasn't me playing, I still would want that solo to announce itself a little bit more, just a bit like, coming in, just a little bit like, hey, everybody, here comes the solo. Yeah. So just a bit more of the solo. Drums up slightly, tiny bit more subbiness to the kick, tiny bit more attack on the kick. Let's go back to here. And then the vocal at times is just a little bit too in there, and other times it's great.
Wondering, it's hard to tell if our love's gone. You got me wondering too. 'Cause every time I try to talk, you don't want to listen.
So Peter's pointing out that the bass could have a bit more mid-range definition. I do agree. It's definitely centered around kind of boo, 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 kind of a low-end toughness.
Wondering, it's hard to tell if our love's gone. You got me wondering too. 'Cause every time I try to talk, you don't want to listen.
It gets a little old. So I think Peter's point is well taken. It could do with a little bit more personality and a little less of just do. Overall, the low end on it is easily sufficient. I actually think the bass could do with a boost in the 750, 1K, 1.2, 1.5 kind of area, sometimes 850. Some of those mid-ranges, as Peter's suggesting. And after you've done that, I would actually turn it down a dB. I don't think it has a problem with the low end. I think it needs, like at the moment, it's too loud for me. I would turn it down. But I would also be thinking about it from a perspective of once you bring in the mid-range, it's going to be louder in the mix, and you bring it down like a dB or so, it will actually have a little less low end in there. So I actually not think it would be that bad of an idea. Let's go to the end.
Hey, what's going on with you? Oh, baby, tell me,
Yeah, it's quite dominant there. Once the drums are up a dB, and you've got a little bit more low lows put in there. How many mics were on the kit on this one? I might be talking out my... So again?
I think this was 4 because we had the 2 Lewitts as the overheads.
Okay, so it's 4. So you should be able to do what we're talking about with the kick and the snare. Bit more body on the snare. You could go to a Pultec 100. You could go to a Neve style EQ and put some 220 on there. You could go to an API, put a 110, 200, something like that. Just go in there and just like 100 or 200. Just get in there and put a little bit more body on the snare mic, a little bit more subbiness to the kick, a little bit more snap to the kick, and then the drums up a dB maximum. Won't need to come up much more than that because you've applied the EQ, meaning they'll get louder. And then bass down overall about a dB everywhere over the whole song, and then bring in the 750, the 850, the 1, the 1, 2, just kind of point some of that mid-range in there. You'll find which will serve more, and you'll get more nose out of it and less. And it's possible with those boosts in the mid-range, you might actually have to bring it down 1.5 dB. But I think it will sit so much better. And then I would just go through and just kind of make sure that the vocal's always sitting nicely on the top. Otherwise, fantastic mix. Thank you for doing this song. I'm a huge fan. Wow, what a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful weekend beginning of. Could I have said that better? Probably. What a wonderful way to end our week and begin the weekend. Thank you, everyone who submitted. Again, it's a big deal. When you submit, you help all of us, because what you're doing is you're allowing us to have the kind of discussions that we have, where we talk about, ways to improve our mixing, our production skills. So I really appreciate it. Everybody that submitted, you all rock. Eric, for choosing them, but forgetting to put up the multi-tracks for the first half. And God bless you all. So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, au revoir, adios, goodbye, tschüss.